When I film videos without the camera on me, like when I'm not looking into the camera, I tend to have way better, more natural sounding voiceovers that are the way that I want to sound them. My last couple of videos about NaNoWriMo have been like this. I've done one or two of them in the past, but I tend to not overthink the videos as much. So that's what I'm going to try for this one. So I'm not looking at the camera, even though it's right there. I see you. Today I wanted to sit down and talk about two books that I've reread. They're not the only two books that I've ever reread. I don't know. Okay, so these two books and the Spiderwick Chronicles are the books in total that I have ever reread. I've never reread anything. Oh, actually, no, I have Oh, yes, I've read that twice too. Okay, that'll be in the video as well. So there are a couple books that I've reread before. I'm going to show you three of them. The other one is the Spiderwick Chronicles, which I don't feel the need to talk about alongside these others. But I think it's worth mentioning that I have reread those, in fact. But these are all the others that I've reread. And I'm going to sort of talk about why and why I like rereading books and why these books in particular are books that I've been coming back to a couple times. So all of these books I have talked about on the channel before, just because I recommend them in the categories that they fit in kind of whenever I can. I really see a lot of value in these, and I think that they're at the very least worth reading once. And if you're really wanting to get a lot out of them, reading them more times is even better. I think that as I have been reading more, these past few years, I've read significantly more than I ever have in any other period of my life. And as I'm doing that, as I'm increasing the amount of books that I've read, I'm realizing the kind of not end goal, but like the goal of what I want is to find all the books that I will reread for the rest of my life. Obviously, I'll keep looking for new books to read alongside what will become my old favorites. I'll always want that new material, and I'm never going to stop looking for new favorites. But I think that I'm really enjoying finding out which books I enjoy rereading. So I think when I rate a book 5 stars, that's really what I'm looking for. Is this a book that I'll come back to that could potentially become a recurring read in my life? So they fit that description. I definitely want to read them again, maybe annually, maybe every couple of years, but definitely for the foreseeable future, these are books that I want in my life and in the rotation. I just think it would be such a cool thing to be able to recommend a book that I've read 15 times. And like right now, that is inconceivable to me. Oh, not inconceivable. It seems far-flung. It seems like a massive out there kind of concept that I've never even held a light to. The most I've ever reread a book is 3 times so far, which for some people that's a lot. Some people that is literally nothing. Based on where I want to be, it feels like it's nothing, but I know that I'm on the way to having a bunch of books that I am an expert in, that I've read a bunch of times and thought deeply about and can really recommend with the knowledge that they have 15 reads worth of knowledge in them, that you'll get something every time, that you might even want. Like obviously my books are going to be different from someone else's books for this. But if someone's looking for a recommendation for me, I feel like that's such a strong criterion is just being able to come back to something over and over and over again. So that's really the goal to my reading journey, I think, is to find those books that I want to do that with, that I want to spend my entire life revisiting. I think that if I could find, a handful of books that are like that for me, that will be so fulfilling. Enough rambling. Let's show you the books here. So the first one I've chosen is The Life of Pi by Jan Martel. This was assigned to me in high school. I actually saw the movie before I read the book. And in school, I had seen the movie just like on my own recreationally. And then in school, they sat us down and showed us the movie and then handed out the book to read. So that I thought was an interesting approach to it. But yeah, I saw the movie twice before I ever read the book. And I've read the book twice so far. Once was physically in school, and the second time was audio book last year. And then I finally got my own my own personal copy of it this past spring while I was studying abroad in Prague. I went to an English bookstore and finally found a nice mass market copy that I could take home with me and could be the one that I come back to and mark up. So since I bought it, I have not yet read it again. The Life of Pi is about a boy named Pi who is on a trip with his family. They're moving from India to, I believe, Toronto, or at least they're on their way to Canada, and the ship that they're on sinks. This isn't exactly a spoiler, it's kind of in the premise. And Pi finds himself on a lifeboat with his family's zoo animals, one of which is the tiger Richard Parker, who's on the cover of the book with Pi. And so while that's like definitely a spectacle, that's a vision, that's like a concrete premise that you can grasp, this book is really about so much more than that. We see Pi's journey into adulthood. We see his spiritual growth. We see him grapple with with religion and wanting to be part of multiple faiths, and each of those faiths telling him that he can't, and him embracing all the faiths anyway. It's such reading this the first time that I did in high school, it was like perfect timing, I think. I think recently confirmed. That was I believe the year of my confirmation. Maybe it was a year before my confirmation. Either way, I was thinking a lot about spirituality at the time. And I don't find myself super religious anymore, but I still love when people can get a lot out of religion, and I love thinking about that kind of stuff. Seeing Pi's take is so much more in line with what I wish could be the general view of religion, sort of taking having belief for belief's sake, and not necessarily tying it to a restrictive set of rules, but believing because belief is necessary, and faith is something that can give us a lot of strength, no matter what that faith is in, whether it's a sort of secular faith or a religious faith in a specific institutional religion, or just something completely that someone made up. I don't particularly. I'm not here to judge. I just think that Pi's approach to religion is there's a lot to be learned from that, and that's something that I want to revisit. Again, I think that reading it twice, I haven't gotten everything out of this, and that's kind of what makes it a book that I really want, that I have read twice, and that I will keep reading into the future. Yeah, really quite good. I struggle with the concept of book recommendations because I don't particularly love book recommendations from people that I don't know. Like, I'm most likely to take a recommendation from someone who knows me personally and hands me the book, I feel like that's kind of my ideal approach to book recommendations. So don't take it from me. I'm just telling you my experience with this, and I hope you find something that kind of clicks with you. If not, that's fine. The next one that I want to talk about, I read for the first time this year and reread it for the first time this year, and it is A Psalm for the Wild Built. I read this first as an ebook, and then I got a hardcover copy once I got back to the U.S., and I got it specifically for the purpose of annotating it. I went through this and marked it up. I used an orange pen and took notes on every chapter, underlined things. I drew little pictures, wrote down kind of my thought process about the things that were being said and being explored. And the point of that, my girlfriend and I, Haley, we really like to read books and mark them up and then give them to the other person to also read and mark up. So then we have a copy with just a bunch of thoughts that we had while we were reading it, and we can kind of cater it to each other and be like, oh, this reminds me of this thing that we both know about, So it's a good way to connect and have a lot of fun with a reread and sort of seeing what else can be. Seeing another person's perspective on a reread is also really cool, especially when that person is someone you really care about. It's an experience that I recommend to anyone who enjoys talking about reading and talking about books with the people they're close to. It's very rewarding and sort of gives me another perspective on this book. If you didn't know, A Psalm for the Wild Built is about a tea monk named Sibling Dex, who is sort of searching for meaning in their life. They are so the role of a tea monk is kind of the best. This is sci-fi. It takes place on a different world with a different society. It's utopian solar punk is kind of like how I like to describe it. Sibling Dex is a monk who goes town to town and listens to people talk about their personal problems and provides them with a tea that will help them, and shares a cup of tea with them and talks them through whatever they're dealing with. And it's such a wholesome thing. And also, I don't know, there's a lot of exploration about what it means to be useful and what it means to be valued in society and what it means to value yourself and feel like you have a purpose. And is that even something that we need? There's a lot explored in such a really short book, and it's so, like, I admire the writing of this so much because the plot is concise, the characters are extremely well developed, and every chapter does so much heavy lifting, all while reading fast and smooth. It does everything so well. Gosh, it just really, like, ideas aside, what it explores aside, it does what it's trying to do impeccably. A large part of the reason why this will be a reread in the future is because I love the characters and I love the themes and I love the way that these things are approached, but also because it's so short. Why not? That's kind of a big part of it. That's one thing that The Life of Pi lacks is The Life of Pi is pretty, like, it's pretty long. I think it's like around 400 pages, a little over 400. And that's kind of long. But this one I know that I'll be able to read in like a week or two. And it also just, I don't know, the themes mean a lot to me. And I'm willing to bet that you'll cry during it, but like be glad about it. It's not a sad book by any means. It just has such strong emotional beats. And I've gushed about this in previous videos, so I'll kind of cut this one off right here. But yeah, A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. The sequel is also out, which Haley and I also read and annotated this year. So yeah, quite good. And the last book that I have in this list is Warriors Into the Wild by Erin Hunter. This is the only book that I've ever read 3 times, believe it or not. So I read it first in 5th grade. I read like all of the Warriors books, not all of them, a lot of the Warriors books. I kind of wish that I had read all of them just to say that I had. By the time, like, I stopped reading them when I was ready to stop reading them. So I feel like pushing that would not have been the best. I think I would have, walked away less satisfied. So I'm glad I stopped where I stopped. It was right for me. But Warriors holds a very special place in my heart as kind of the series that got me into reading in the first place. Obviously, I'd read some other books before. I read Spiderwick before I ever picked up Warriors. I had enjoyed, other books in elementary school. But Warriors sort of hit something different for me. And kind of the point of me rereading this as many times as I have is to sort of figure out why it hit for me. I think I was enamored by the idea of being put into a society so different from my own, which is something that I don't think I had really read up until that point. Like Spiderwick, it takes place on Earth this takes place on Earth too, but it follows humans as the main characters, even though there's cool like fantasy creatures and stuff. Warriors is so different just by the fact that it's protagonists and antagonists. Every character is a cat. I think it was my first exposure to like cultural world building, and what that can do for a story and how it can pull you into a narrative that you'd otherwise feel so disconnected from. Like, who cares about the politics of forest cats? Apparently me. It was cool kind of going back and psychoanalyzing where Warriors introduced me to concepts that are now things that I see as just fundamental to life, such as like border disputes, and like the idea of territoriality and defending a country from an invading force, are all things that I was sort of introduced to in a more concrete way in Warriors than I ever had been in the past, and have stuck with me because of that. And I don't think that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just a thing. That's how I was sort of exposed to a lot of adult real world concepts, was through a kid's book about cats. And to go beyond that, there are antagonists who are manipulative. And I sort of learned how to recognize manipulation in there. There are characters who are brave. There are characters who aren't. There are characters who communicate that it's okay to not be brave if that's what the situation calls for. There's so much complexity to it that I am so glad that I got at a young age. And it's also really cool to go back and look at where some of my ideas about life and the way things are come from by looking at books that I read as a kid. I might be overstating the influence of this book in my life. I don't think that this is the only thing that taught me about like nationalism and territoriality by any means. But I do think that it's I don't know, it's a prominent feature. This is something from my childhood that I think back on, and being able to go back and look at that is really a valuable experience and a valuable skill. Sort of knowing how to approach my childhood favorites again without ruining it for myself is something I'm getting a lot better at, and Warriors has allowed me to do on reread. So again, this is one that I will be coming back to time and time again in the future. With Life of Pi and Warriors Into the Wild, I'm hoping to reread them again like in the next 2 months. Life of Pi is calling my name right now, so maybe I'll read it as my next book. We'll see. I've got a lot on this sort of amorphous TBR, so to speak, but it could be soon. Warriors, I really like reading around the holiday season. I don't know why it's not like a holiday book, but I've read it like over Thanksgiving break the past 2 years, so that's been fun. But that'll be my 4th read of this, which is kind of wild. And I love that this copy of it is kind of, worn and smooth and a little bit tattered, as a testament to how many times I've read it. And this other copy is the one that, again, I read and marked up and then gave to Haley to read and mark up as well, which, especially with a book from my childhood, is a very sort of cool experience to be able to do. These have been my books that I will be rereading for years to come. I don't know what the video name will be yet. You already know. But that is that. Thank you all so much for watching. I always appreciate you being here and listening, whether you watch the screen the whole time or just listen. Either way is cool with me. I try to make the videos in such a way that you can do either. I know I really like to watch, like, quote unquote, watch YouTube while I do the dishes and stuff like that. So props to you if you are a listener watcher. At the end of the videos, I've been telling a secret, and today's secret, what is today's secret? Today's secret is that before the video started, I just pushed all of the mess out of the frame. You might actually be able to see some of the mess still. I didn't actually check that closely. So maybe you can tell that I just kind of hastily shoved things aside. Let me know if you could tell.